Welcome to The Pure Perspective, the podcast where we explore the many pathways to recovery. I'm your host, Kyle Van Blerkum, and I'm thrilled to have you here with us today. At The Pure Perspective, we're on a mission to shine light onto the journey of healing, resilience, and hope. Each episode, we bring you powerful stories of individuals who have faced substance use and mental health challenges head-on, along with insights from trained professionals and family members offering unwavering support. Whether you're on your own path to recovery or seeking to understand the struggles and triumphs of others, you're in the right place. This podcast is a safe space for inspiration, connection, and growth. Get ready for candid conversations, heartfelt stories, and valuable insights right here on The Pure Perspective. Before we dive into today's inspiring episode, a quick shout out to our friends over at Recovery Rockstars. If you're seeking a supportive community dedicated to recovery and empowerment, look no further. Join their fantastic Facebook group and connect with like-minded individuals on your journey to healing and growth. Remember, together we're stronger. Welcome back, everyone, to another insightful episode of The Pure Perspective. Today we have a remarkable guest joining us, Dan J. Dan brings a wealth of experience as a former member of the Army and working as a police officer. But today, he's not just here to share his professional journey, he's here to fight the stigma around addiction by sharing his deeply personal story. Dan's vulnerability and willingness to break down barriers will inspire you. His personal experiences have profoundly influenced his professional life, and he's committed to shedding light on the often overlooked aspects of addiction. Get ready for an eye-opening conversation as we dive into Dan's story, his experiences, and the lessons he's learned along the way. Let's welcome Dan as he shares his incredible journey of resilience and advocacy against addiction stigma. Without further ado, here's Dan.
I started drinking when I was 13 years old. Started on Halloween. Ended up at a cousin's house who kept pouring glasses of wine, and my brother was smart enough not to start drinking, and I did. And it was the instant I feel great, and so I kept doing it because it ended up being an escape.
So you knew right away that you loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in growing up, I was the second of four kids, and it was, I was in trouble a lot, and it was just an escape for me to get out of not, feeling in trouble or, whatever, and worrying about being grounded, this or that. It was just, it was a way to escape from how I was living at home.
Did alcoholism or addiction run in your family at all?
Absolutely.
Did, okay.
Both my grandpas, couple uncles, and it definitely is prevalent and genetic for me. So, and I was quickly identified as an alcoholic because I ended up getting caught and was taken for an alcohol assessment at a very early age, and they didn't have ADHD back in the 70s. And so I was just a hyperactive child. That was it.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't much for it. As far as treatments, I suppose if I would have been back in the 50s, 60s, I probably would have got a lobotomy, but
right.
and unfortunately that's the way mental health has been.
Yeah.
Certainly made some advances over the years, but it's all new, and so there wasn't a whole lot of direction or treatment plan at that time, and my parents being parents, there's no guidebook, and so they're trying to figure out how to deal with this, and
Yeah. Do you think part of it was to self-medicate?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was anything to change. It's the racing thoughts, the not being able to focus or pay attention. And I smoked marijuana like a couple times, and I didn't like it much just because of the fact that you ended up as you melted into the couch and you sat and laughed at cartoons for however many hours, and I couldn't function on it. That was plain and simple for me. But anything to alter what's going on in your head, and as a kid, you don't know what you're dealing with, and you're getting asked the question, well, what's wrong with you? I don't know, and you're trying to figure it out. And so definitely the drinking allowed my head to be in a better place than we'll call it a better place. It changed the chemistry, and that certainly I would say was a factor in why I continued. And then just with growing up and the social factors and everything like that, and trying to fit in, which was kind of funny because you take it to the extremes like I did, and well, then it's no longer socially acceptable.
Right.
Everybody's looking at you like, oh, you're the kid who gets drunk all the time. So, It's no longer you showed up at a party, had a couple beers, and you put a lampshade on your head, and it was funny.
Right.
No, you're the kid passing out and puking in the front yard, and So,
how long did that cycle?
From 13 till I was 18. I never. I don't want to say never. In high school, the biggest legal thing that I ever dealt with was getting arrested for stealing hood ornaments, and
Sorry, I'm not.
No, it was
such a high school thing,
right?
Right.
And I think about that, and it's like, how stupid. We finally found this house that had, we were looking for the Dodge Ram, the big, truck hood ornament.
Yeah.
Finally found one. And I go up and I try and get it off, and it was too high up in the air, and I couldn't get any leverage on it, and I'm sitting and yanking on it and making all sorts of noise, and all of a sudden the driveway light turns on from the house, and like, oh God, we got to get out of here, take off, and long story short, we got arrested. And it was just before my 18th birthday, and they wanted to charge me as an adult, but because I was going into the Army, they were able to keep it as a juvenile charge, so it didn't keep me from going into the Army. And that was, for me going into the Army, I had, going to mental health, and the ADHD, and I couldn't focus. I had no aspiration to go to college because I knew it wasn't going to do me any good. I wasn't, I barely got through high school, and so the Army was the only thing that was going to get me out of the house, and doing something somewhat productive. And really my intent was to retire out of the Army, and alcohol played a factor in that, where my first 2 years in Germany, you throw an 18-year-old in Germany, not a great idea.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Well, you can drink.
Sure.
It's legal for you to drink over there, and and there again, for that part of it, there was really no legal problems. I was making it to work on time, to formations. I was doing, the PT, the physical training, going for runs in the morning, and being hungover or still drunk and doing it.
Yeah,
it wasn't a big deal.
Especially at 18.
Yeah, I was able to function. And you got to points where you realize that there were certain things, if you were going to be out drinking, that, you do this or do that to keep, to keep it so you're able to do your job. But so anyway.
Yeah. Do you think that being in the Army, like, contributed to the alcoholism at all? I mean, the culture as far as, like...
Well, I would say yes. Because...
Or give you the illusion that maybe you were a functional alcoholic. Yeah.
There was absolutely... When you had your downtime, it was, let's get drunk.
Yeah.
Everything revolved around that. And that's, one of my regrets is that I don't hold too much of it because I look at it that I was 18, 19 years old and didn't know any better. But
right.
At that age, I wish I would have, seen more while I was over there. I mean, I saw plenty of bars, but there's a lot more historical stuff I would have loved to have seen. And so it's, it's being young and dumb. And, but like I said, you get your off time and that's in the bear. I mean, it's so accessible too. I mean, like I said, you're 18 years old. You can go to the base PX and get alcohol. It's easy, and but when I came back to the States to Fort Knox, that was different because I think it was like 6 months before I turned 18 or 21, so I couldn't drink anymore. But people would buy for you, and
didn't stop you.
No, no. It was a little bit of a hindrance because if you got caught, you'd get in trouble. But
how long? So you were over in Germany?
I was in Germany for 2 years.
2 years, got it.
Yeah. And and that's one of the things from my childhood and growing up. And it's taken a lot of years to process and realize a lot of this. But looking for, I think a lot of what I was missing as a child, call it approval, someone who was proud of me. It didn't play out like it should have when I was a kid. And that's a whole other topic. But so one of my old tank commanders, we had gone out one night and I drank a whole lot more than I probably should have. And that was the night I ended up passed out in his room because he said he didn't want me to go sleep in my room and, puke and choke and die. And he sexually assaulted me that night. And that, in looking at all that, there's so many different facets to that. Because I can look back and I can see it was almost like I was, and then back then, it was the don't ask, don't tell. And so now here I am faced with the decision of, do I report this? How is this going to be perceived? I'm not a homosexual, but who's going to believe it? And kind of like we were talking about before, innocent till proven guilty.
Right.
It's not going to go well. Everybody has that opportunity to form their own opinion. Given whatever limited information they have. And, ultimately he was found guilty, and that whole experience, while it should have, and that's the funny part about addiction, that experience should have said, yep, you drinking is probably not a good idea.
Right.
It just caused more. Because now I'm trying to drink to forget. I'm trying to drink to not have to feel the feelings. And at that point, I lost a lot of friends. For whatever their reasons were, didn't want to be associated with me. Sorry, Steve was.
I know, I heard him in there yawning.
No, he's crying.
Oh, he's crying.
But it to, childhood experience too, where, with being grounded as much as I was, whether people were making the decision they didn't want to be friends with me because I was drinking so much, but, now I'm isolating again. And that's, I didn't feel that I was normal or I fit in with the other people. And it's that in itself, was throw that in with all the other mental health stuff. And I was miserable. And
it's interesting because in addiction, just about actually mental health, every single person that I've talked to so far has made that same, comparison that at some point, they put themselves in this isolated state away from everyone. And,
right.
It's like, I feel that even from my own story, I can relate to just being in that place. Whether you put yourself there in a lot of ways, right, or, you start to, how much of it is actually true or not. But that's where we end up, right?
Right, and that goes absolutely to the mental health. We're our own worst enemies, and the voice inside my head, why that thing has as much power over me, or why I let it, through all that, it's amazing, because I could. I don't know if this is a good analogy, but say, I could have $100 in my hand, but the voice in my head could convince me that I don't. I mean, even though I know something to be true, that voice will talk me out of it. And that was, I'm trying to think how to incorporate this, but that with the self-confidence, the self-esteem, very quickly, that destroyed me. Because I allowed that to take over, and I didn't believe the things that, other people were telling me about myself. I didn't think that I could amount to anything else. Not so much, I want to say, past experience. I think it's looking at how you view failure and experience. Mm-hmm. If you look at it as failure in your experiences as, I'm just not good and I can't do this, like I was saying before, if everybody was good at it, or if it wasn't hard, how did I say it?
Everyone.
If it
wasn't hard, everyone would do it.
Yes. And that's, looking at failure for me at that point in time was, I'm just not good enough and I can't do it. Mm-hmm. Whereas, failure now is, okay, what did I do wrong? What can I learn from that? How can I get better? And how can I change this?
Yeah.
And not having had much experience with using those skills, I just opted for I must not be good enough, so I can't do this.
Yeah.
And just gave up. And being told that I was an alcoholic at such a very early age, I was like, well, hell, if that's the case, I'll be the best one I can be.
Right.
let's just dive in. Yeah. And so there's part of it where I just kind of wrapped my arms around it and accepted it.
Yeah.
I had been, exposed to, certain things with, trying to learn not how to drink or, but being 15 to 20 years old, it just didn't make sense to me at that point.
Yeah.
At that time, again, I still wasn't even of legal drinking age, so that took me out of the normal. You're not going to be, you're not going to be turning 21 and go out to the bars for your birthday, because that's what everybody does.
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot of, the stigma of, if you're not drinking, well, there must be something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Well, there is, but that doesn't make me any different. In the sense of, I'm still a person, still have feelings. I just can't put the alcohol or drugs in my body.
Yeah.
Because when I do, some bad stuff will happen.
Right.
And it's not a matter of if, it's just when. And, it's certainly gotten better over the years, but like I said, the stigma of, oh, you don't drink, well, there's got to be something wrong with you. And having grown up with that my entire life,
being labeled an alcoholic at such an early age.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was just very difficult, and that absolutely contributed to continuing to drink more and to I don't know if so much want to try and hide it, but do the isolation where you pull away from people and
don't tell them where you're really at. What's
right,
really going
right.
on.
You might have a couple people that you talk to at the bar, but you certainly aren't having any real conversations with them. It's just talking about sports, talking about whatever happened. There's not talking about real human emotion, and I don't know for you, but for me, it's certainly with that isolation and with the lack of contact with other people, connection, that certainly brought me more into depression, loss of aspiration, because where do I fit in this world? And that was extremely hard, but I ended up getting an OWI or DWI, OWI, whatever you want to call it. I was driving and drinking, or I had been drinking, and I finally hit a point where I realized I had to stop. One, it was destroying relationships, and the worst one was my mom. I mean, and it's funny because she would always say, "Why do you do this to yourself?" Because it's fun. I mean, at some point it stopped becoming fun, and it was just, that was just my existence. But
what's right in line with, well, why don't you just stop? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. But she knew that, having had her own experience with an alcoholic father, that drinking, me continuing to drink and seeing the way that I was doing it, I was destroying myself. I was gonna end up dead, and I've had, I couldn't even tell you how many different suicide attempts, but that voice, and I think part of it too with that voice is you drink to not hear that voice, and then when it gets to that point, for me it was just like I just wanted to end everything, because drinking wasn't working, being sober and having that voice in my head wasn't working, and just no self-esteem, no self-worth, and I've painted myself into a corner, because now I don't have any friends, because I've isolated. I'm drinking to the point of just pushing everybody away, and this is something that will become an asset in future years or at that point, but because you're telling all the lies to try and have people see you normal or to get away with stuff, those behaviors, you're trying to hide all that stuff. And I know I'm jumping forward here, but when I got into law enforcement, that was one of the things that made me really good at my job, was because if I ever dealt with somebody who was an addict, or I'd been there, I knew the lies, what they were saying, it wasn't foreign to me, and was able to cut to the issue a lot quicker than other people who had never dealt with addiction.
Right.
And I got labeled as the counselor cop. Throw on your sweater vest and sit down, because when it came to mental health and addiction, when I was introduced to that in that capacity, I knew that just arresting somebody or whatever, it wasn't as simple as following a procedure, because everybody is different, and if you don't sit down and have that conversation and attempt to try and get to the bottom, what helps in a week. Yeah, absolutely. The revolving door, absolutely. But how was I going to help that person? And that was, at that point, I had a period of sobriety for 17 years, and that was, for me, I looked at it as an opportunity to provide help to other people that I was never afforded. Because, there were incidents that I had with police as, younger, where it was exactly that. It was not taking into consideration any of the things that were going on in my life. Not that they have to, but, as a decent person, why wouldn't you? Yeah. Not everything is cut and dry. It's not clear and concise, and but the ability to help other people, that was a lot of why I enjoyed that job. Was
at what point did you get into law enforcement?
Well, so after the DWI, and that was in '97. I worked a couple different jobs. I was in collections for a little while, which that got to a point where there was the ability to help people in bad financial situations,
yeah.
And that helped. But I felt like there was so much more that I could do, and I had done a ride along with a friend, and I saw the job, and I was like, I loved it.
Yeah.
I saw so much opportunity, to be able to help other people, and and when there was times, when I'd arrested people, if they were, you could see the desperation, to be able to sit there and have that conversation with them and tell them, hey, there's a better way. You don't have to keep doing this, and just try and point them in the right direction of trying to find a way to stay sober, and explain to them, because again, we're our own worst enemy, and somebody in that situation, the worst thing in the world has just happened to them.
Yeah.
They think their life is over, and having been through experiences like that and been able to work through them and rebound, I know that it's not the end of the world. It's not an insurmountable mountain in front of me that I can't get over.
Right.
Is it going to be hard? Yes.
Sure.
Am I going to have to do some work? Absolutely. But
yeah. No, I was just thinking, actually, a friend of mine just shared a similar situation where she had a few run-ins, we'll call them, with police officers, and that was a huge role in her own recovery. Was this police officer kept arresting her?
Yeah.
But would check in. So I think, like, God, if there's more people like that, that were invested and seeing people do well and wanted to know more about their story and all that stuff.
See, and that's,
I know it's a difficult thing.
yeah, that's a whole other topic. But with that, the sad part is police aren't trained in enough of that. The only reason why I was able to do what I did was because of the fact that I had a history with, seeing mental health providers, with, having been through treatment.
Yeah.
With having those experiences, I've been there, and I knew, like I said, that I could get through those things. And if other police officers have never experienced that, one, never knowing what it's like to have been in that situation, they don't realize how it's going to affect that person.
Right.
The mental health, if they've never experienced depression or suicidal thoughts, they're like, well, why would you want to kill yourself?
Right.
Really? I can give you a whole list of things. You're not going to want to hear them, but, because they just have never had, or they've been fortunate enough to never experience that. So, like I said, having had that and being able to empathize with somebody and, be able to have, because ultimately it comes down to the justice system who's got the final say, but to be able to be involved in that and, I don't know if I want to say so much influence, the direction that things go, but I had the choice of, do I arrest this person or do I refer them to something else?
Right.
And, ultimately, there was, a lot of the situations where you try and help somebody out, and unfortunately, like we talked about before, the revolving door, it just, but if, I know things are getting better, but they're also, the programs are limited as to,
and someone might just not be ready to
there's
get the help.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter who's telling them.
Yep, that's one of the big factors as well. And you as well as I do, is you could talk to someone until you're blue in the face, and unless they're ready to make that choice and decision, it's not going to happen. I mean, and this is a great analogy for me too. Is, if I had a time machine, go back to 1980 and tell my 8-year-old self, hey, don't do these things.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm still
done
gonna. Yeah. I had to go through those experiences to be able to get to a point to make that decision and choice,
and to be able to help people.
Right.
In the process.
Yep.
Right. All that lived experience is worth something today.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the beauty of it, is we can connect with people that other people can't, right?
And that's, to that point, absolutely, is to be able to find somebody who has been through those experiences. I can speak for myself. I know that when I finally met somebody who could relate to me on that level, I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel isolated. It was, suddenly there's somebody else who's like me. I obviously there's other people who are out there drinking and doing stupid stuff, but when you can finally relate or have that connection with somebody who has experienced the same experiences, maybe as a child or as a young adult, who's been through those situations, that's when, it's like, like meeting a long lost twin or something.
Yeah.
It's like, my story, you've been through the same things that I've been through, and there's that level of connection. And once, you're able to get that, and like I said, lose the isolation, not feel alone, feel like there's actually help, that's an important factor.
Yeah.
Because if I would have never had that, I would have just continued to still think, I'm special and I'm the only one who's ever been like this.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about the shift and kind of, what your recovery looks like today, and the things that you're doing to kind of counter some of those? Because I'm assuming you still have the same. Those thoughts come up, right?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, they'll never go away. One of the things, there's been a lot of, over the last 7 years, there's been a lot of involvement with mental health professionals, and really getting to the root cause and the core of where my brain goes when I start to think those things and why I think those things. And ultimately it comes down to learning, for me, it came down to learning how to, self-talk yourself out of those things.
Yeah.
You know, being more observant of the things that happen in your life, in the sense of, you know, I got up and took a shower today. Hey, at least you got up and you did something.
Okay, right. Kind of twisting.
You know, right.
Changing
Is changing your perspective on those things, because, you know, otherwise I would sit and think, you know, and that was a never-ending battle. Was I wouldn't do anything, and then, you know, I'm like, then I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'm a piece of shit because I didn't do anything today, and then it just perpetuates itself right into, you know, I'm a horrible person because I can't do anything. Well, like I said, it's being able to the small victories and giving yourself credit for the things that you know. And then I think one of the other things was, you know, I thought that I needed to have, you know, like when I was married, you know, I needed to have a wife, and I needed to be able to take care of myself before I could even do those things. And that's, you know, one of my regrets is that, you know, just not being in that place and things happening the way they happen with that. But that's,
right.
You know, I had to be able to live with myself and before I could give myself to another person. And that's not an easy thing, one, to even identify, you know, because I'm 51 years old and I'm still learning stuff that I should have known probably 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But doing the mental health work, that's made a big difference. I think, you know, my spirituality, you know, like I mentioned before, that I'm special and, you know, my problems are worse than anything anybody else. Again, I'm not that unique. I'm not that special. Other people have experienced that, and that was one of the things with my relationship with God, was that, you know, my you know, my problems and the situations that I've been through, even though I know that you know, other people may have murdered people and whatever, and God still loves them. Well, somehow my brain was able to tell me that, you know, I'm still worse than those people, and God wouldn't love me.
We're so unique, right?
Right, and that's you know, they call it terminal uniqueness.
Yeah.
And that's it is such a problem, because and I think that comes to, you know, not having relationships with other people who have had like experiences. You know, I think somewhat because of the stigma and everything like that. And I think, you know, people are less likely to seek that out. And one, I think because you're admitting that you have a problem.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, nobody likes that. But when you finally get comfortable enough to be able to do that, I think the doors open up as far as recovery is concerned. You know, and treatment, for me, I mean, that was just being 30 days sober.
Right.
The real work comes after that. And, you know, to that point, you know, whenever I had like a DWI arrest with somebody, you know, and they're like, my life is over. And I'm like, no, it's not. You know, this happened. You know, what makes a difference is, what do you do tomorrow?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, for me, one of the things is, okay, this happened. What am I going to do tomorrow about it? You know, there's certain things obviously I can do today, but how am I going to view this tomorrow and put it in a positive light?
Right.
Because I could, and I think that was part of my issue before, was that I didn't have that outlook, and I just thought that things were going to keep piling on, things were going to get worse, and didn't try and do anything. And again, speaking to the failures, is if it didn't work, I don't know any other way of doing it. And so I think that's with the mental health work, was learning other ways to, strategies, coping, mechanisms to deal with those things. Again, rather than listening to the voices in my head telling me that you're a piece of shit, you're not worth it.
Right.
That's been a big change for me. Having a support system has been enormous.
Yeah.
Like I said, having that connection with people who have experienced some of the same things or think the same way that I do, that changes things a lot. Because if I run into an issue where I start feeling like, and I don't know about you, but if I start having certain experiences or thoughts, I know that if I don't deal with them, it's a slippery slope and I'll go down.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So that in itself, if I don't address those things quickly, I can get to dark places. And
I mean, I'm so bad that if I don't share those dark thoughts with people, that I'm really good at convincing myself that that's the reality. So I almost need that sounding board in order to put it into perspective of how fucked up my thinking is.
Absolutely.
And that's something I struggle with. Just even if it is fucked up, just say it.
Yeah. Well,
chances are that most people in our situation can relate or say, "Oh yeah, I felt like that before."
And that's that. I mean, that goes to having the going back. If I had the time machine, now I actually have that ability to be open to other people's advice, thoughts.
Right.
Because I can look at them and say they've experienced the same things that I have, and maybe not necessarily do exactly what they say, but be open to a new process, to give it a chance to say, okay, well, yeah, what I'm doing doesn't work, because my thoughts, my best plans have gotten me to where I am today, and had I maybe listened to other people, I might not have to have gone through those hardships. And I mean, those things obviously have shaped me to who I am today and allow me to help other people. And who's to say what other mistakes I may have made, but having the ability now to be open and at least willing to try the different things. Because, again, like I said, my best thoughts have not served me well in the past. And because those are all influenced with the person who tells me I'm a piece of shit, and the last person that I got drunk with. Yeah. That person is no good. And
I like that.
So I think just being involved with other people in a community like that and I with the 17 years of sobriety that I had previously, I wasn't involved with anybody like that. That didn't help. I mean, I was sober, I wasn't drinking, but that didn't change who I was as a person. I mean, I still was, trying to be of service to people and to help out, but there was still a lot of things about myself that I wasn't identifying maybe I wasn't drinking, but I was still acting like I was a drinking, or that I was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Was I still being an asshole? Yeah, probably in certain situations, and things that I could have done to change that. And that's where, doing what I'm doing now allows me to be more objective, be more introspective, and be considerate of how I interact with other people.
Yeah.
And maybe give that person, there's times that you give them one chance, and you're like, yeah, well, if you're not going to do this, screw you, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
But now being able to say, okay, like you're saying, is maybe they weren't ready for it, and they're going to have to experience this. But being willing to go back and revisit with that person, saying, hey, okay, yeah, you went back out and did this. Should we try again?
Right.
And afford them that opportunity, because someone did that for me. There's certain relationships I will, likely never get back, but the ones who have stuck by me and the new ones that I have now that I know would stick by me because they've experienced those things, that's meant the world to me to have that support. And knowing that if I did fall, that's exactly what I was just saying, is that they'll stick by me. But knowing that if I did fall again, that they would be there, if I needed a hand to get picked back up again. Just having that support makes a huge difference for me.
Yeah, I mean, I know as far as my story goes, I've had several relapses in the last 5 years, and it's interesting because this last time, I had a support system that rallied around me when I fell, and that's something I'd never had before.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to joke around, and when I was actively using, we would stay at different hotels, and I would joke around and be like, "Oh, I must be walking into my intervention," and it never happened, and here I am. In a moment of clarity, I have all these people around me, and I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, I have a real life intervention here, and that's possible because of recovery.
Right.
Those people were all in my life because of recovery. So it's, I mean, I can totally relate. And maybe this is a good time to kind of segue. You had shared with me that you recently got certified as a peer support yourself.
Yes.
How do you think, those skills translate, into the law enforcement capacity, and how do you plan to utilize that?
Well, I think one of the really important things with that is just with the peer support is you're just meeting people where they're at.
Yeah.
You're not telling them what to do. You're not, saying, well, this is what you have to do. It's sitting down and having that conversation, and that's one of the big things that's missing. And sorry to go back to this, but with law enforcement is when you're a cop, you're just going from call to call to call.
Yeah.
You don't have that option or the luxury to be able to sit down and have a conversation with somebody. Kind of like we're doing right now is, taking time in the afternoon to sit down and actually talk.
Yeah.
You don't have that opportunity. And that's what I love about peer support is that you have the chance to sit down and just talk to that person, figure out what's going on in their life, and be able to offer them, suggestions of, this is what's worked for me, and do it on a level where they can actually see that, yeah, it's helped. And, going back to the point of, well, are they ready for it? Well, that's where they have to make that decision and choice for themselves.
But we'll be there for them when they do.
Then that's exactly what I was alluding to, is that if they still are wanting to go out and experiment and do more research, then they certainly can do that. But when you're done, give me a call. I can, we can certainly set something up for next week, and we'll see where things are at. But just leaving that door open and seeing that there is someone out there that's willing to work with them and try and help them. It's not doing the work for them, because that's ultimately, how I learned was that I had to do things for myself. I couldn't have everybody else do something for me because I didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah.
And so that's a big piece of it, is just, like I said, meeting them where they're at and showing them, like I said, that there is hope, and that being at this point now, and why I'm looking to move forward with this, is that because law enforcement was a catalyst for me to be able to help other people, but I was very limited in that capacity.
Right.
You were only afforded certain programs to refer people to, and you didn't have a good opportunity to do follow-up. And especially seeing I work nights too, it wasn't conducive. Hey, I'll give you a call at 3 o'clock in the morning. We'll follow up.
Right.
I'll pull you over if you're drunk again. But no, so it really gives me the opportunity to do those things in a better capacity.
Yeah.
And having been through a lot of the same stuff, I can absolutely empathize that it's not an easy path. And I mean, like I said before, I don't know what would have happened if I would have had this opportunity when I was going through it. Who knows? But to be able to have the chance to have somebody have the opportunity to wake up tomorrow morning and actually feel better about themselves, yeah, that is something that's a gift that, you know, I've been afforded now a lot of days, because I don't drink anymore, because I don't use drugs anymore, and again, like I said, I don't have to think those things about myself, and I think, like, things have changed enough in the world where, or our culture, where, you know, things are viewed with addiction differently, and I think having an advocate and somebody who's going to promote it for you, that would definitely make a difference in someone's recovery. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing stuff. I just think that the peer support movement is really, you know, starting to take off, and you know, it's interesting how I'm just excited to see where it goes in the future.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, absolutely, and that's, you know, like I was saying before, with the stigma of addiction, I think there's a good portion of that going away. I mean, with I can't think of his name, with the guy from Friends, you know, Matthew Perry. People be able to see that, and they look at him, and now they're seeing his story, and they're able to say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that."
right.
It's not, you know, to be able to put the pieces together of, you know, I'm getting hammered all the time. Well, why? People don't know that.
Yeah.
They look at it as, oh, he drinks too much. Well, there's a whole mental health portion of that, why people do these things.
Right.
And so to be able to put that together and have that stigma, you know, dropped, you know, just a little bit. And I think with that, people who are needing to be in recovery are more likely to get into recovery.
Yeah.
Because they, again, the not feeling alone, the isolation, the I'm special, that changes a big thing, or a lot of things.
I think gone are the days where, you know, you see the person on the side of the road under the bridge drinking a 40, and you're like, oh, that's what an alcoholic is. Like, it's
Right.
people know that that's not
Right.
what it is anymore. They know that drug addiction, alcoholism affects all walks of life, or at least they're starting to open their eyes to that. So I think that, you know, you're absolutely right. Just talking about it, having these conversations, you know, and that's what peer support is really all about. I want to take the last, you know, couple minutes and just give you an opportunity if there's anything else that you want to, you know, talk about.
Well, I will say, you know, as far as the peer support goes, and it's been relatively recent that they've started implementing this stuff. You know, when I went through my experience here recently of going back to using, it definitely would have made a difference in my life, because of the fact that having somebody who is going to be there to provide that support, whereas I got well, why don't you just stop?
Yeah.
And then, you know, in the culture of law enforcement, you know, you start talking about addiction, well, you're going to lose your job quick.
Yeah.
Because, and I get it to a point, because you're being upheld to a certain standard, and that's okay. But people in that field, they're normal people.
Right. And to say that addiction doesn't affect
Yes.
people in law enforcement, if anything, it just makes them try to hide it more.
Right. And that made it more difficult for me at that point, was because if I asked for the help, then I'm going to lose my job. And like you said, to that point, I had to hide it.
Yeah.
And not getting any help at that time, things just got worse. And it spiraled out of control quickly. And, that ultimately, ended up to, a suicide attempt. And because I had lost all hope, it was there was no one to turn to, because that help wasn't there. If I did, I was going to lose my job, which, ultimately wasn't the worst thing in the world.
Right.
It got me to where I am now. But at that point in time, and that's, I think, a lot of addicts need to realize, is that because something happens, and I mentioned this before, it's not the end of the world. It's what are you going to do tomorrow? And it's taking advantage of, what, I don't know if I want to say so much services, but the opportunity out there of, something like peer support, of, whatever kind of program you want to get involved in. But there is the help out there, and it's how much you want to get involved that will make the difference. And it made the difference in my life the more involved I got. And thinking about that, like you said, with things becoming more prevalent in this field now, or becoming more accepted, it just makes it that much more easy. And I take that back. It's not easy, but it just
Right.
makes it more accessible. It's there.
More resources, more
Yeah.
tools at your disposal.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think that for a lot of people, they don't necessarily know where to go, right?
Right.
And I think that peer support can be kind of the first point of contact for a lot of people.
Right.
When talking about law enforcement, at some point, I would love to see referrals come from law enforcement. Like, hey, you know what? We don't have time to sit here and deal with this, but give this guy a call. They've been there, they've done that, and they're willing to help.
That's an absolutely wonderful idea.
And I think that could essentially maybe alleviate some of the issues that law enforcement are dealing with right now. And give someone who does get in trouble an option.
Yeah.
If they want it. So.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. That's perfect. Yeah.
Well, Dan, I'm just so grateful that you were willing to be vulnerable with me today. Share your story. Thank you for your service. I don't think I said that. I think my whole purpose for doing this is to really just shed light and show people that substance use disorder, mental health, it doesn't discriminate. It affects all walk of life, all professions. And there are people out there who do want to help and do want to see, help other people that are struggling. So I just, this was amazing, and I'm so grateful you were willing to do this with me.
Yeah, and actually, one last thing was that was one of the things for me is when I would have an interaction with somebody who was in a situation like that, where either alcohol or drugs were involved and they got in trouble, and like I said, they thought it was the end of the world. It was always I felt it was imperative for me to tell them, hey, it's not the end of the world, because I've been there. I was able to get through it, and just be able to share, like I said, that you're not alone with this, and that it doesn't have to be debilitating. So, and Steve takes a drink. So,
awesome.
well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this inspiring journey of strength and recovery. If you found this episode meaningful, please consider subscribing to The Pure Perspective to stay updated on our upcoming episodes. Your support means the world to us, and by sharing these stories, you're helping to spread hope and resilience to those who may need it most. Remember, you're not alone on your journey, and together we can make a difference. Subscribe now, and let's keep moving forward one story at a time.